Well, good morning, good afternoon, well, wherever you may be. Welcome to Zyxel's Tech Talk. My name is Tri Nguyen. I am the product manager, sales manager here at Zyxel North America. Good to have you here and joining this discussion at Zyxel Networks here today. So I like to have this to be an interactive conversation here as well. So if you'd like, the format is to use the Q&A section to send me any questions that you might have, and I'll try to answer those in line with what with our presentation today. So today we're going to be talking about how multi-gig is really the direction that is being pushed forward by a lot of different technologies, primarily Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi 7, other types of applications like IP cameras and conferencing, things like that, or even terminal systems that are using higher speeds, but also higher power as well. So we're going to be having a discussion about that. But before we jump on in, just a quick introduction of Zyxel. So we just celebrated 35 years now this year of networking expertise. 100 million devices making connections. Over 1 million businesses work smarter with Zyxel solutions. We have 700 employees worldwide serving 150 different markets at Zyxel Networks. We're trusted to deliver connectivity to millions around the world using a lot of partnerships and different vendors that are out there, different brands that use our solutions today. We utilize industry leaders as our partners, companies like Wirestorm, McAfee, Norton, Webroot, Bitdefender, to provide a lot of their expertise, their solutions into our products. We are a channel-focused company here on the channel side. We have 3 account managers here to serve you as partners, David Chen, Andy, and Jacob. We're serving all of North America, including Canada. So if you are in any of these states, those are the people that you contact to have any kind of pre-sales, post-sales. You need support, system engineering, you have stocking issues, or you have stock questions or pricing, special pricing, deal registrations, etc. Work through them. Even if you're working through distribution, bring us on board so we can help to orchestrate from our end to facilitate everything that you need. We are a solutions-driven company as well. By utilizing partners like yourself, being able to give you end-to-end solutions, because we make the products ourselves, we have our R&D, we can create and facilitate any kind of customizations or maybe feature functions that can make your life or your customers' lives better in the networking space. So we have an end-to-end product solution, a comprehensive portfolio from appliances, wireless solutions for security, wireless LAN connectivity, gateway routers with uh, hotspot connectivity capabilities, and then being able to manage it in multiple different ways, either standalone or within our Nebula Cloud platform. So let's talk about the main kind of, I think, the driving force of why multi-gig becomes very popular or being pushed forward in the coming years is because of Wi-Fi 7. The Wi-Fi Alliance predicts that 233 million Wi-Fi 7 devices will enter the market this year and will grow to 2.1 billion in 2028 or by 2028. It's because, again, every kind of technology, it's always faster, just more stable, more bandwidth, and then doing it maybe a different way to help facilitate the biggest issues within that technology. Wi-Fi technology, the biggest stumbling point right now for it is either signal quality or throughput. Throughput is getting there because you're getting speeds now that are beyond most traditional gigabit infrastructures today. But the biggest piece that Wi-Fi offers, like Wi-Fi 7, is the ability to run even higher bandwidth, but then mitigate some of the latency issues that come with Wi-Fi, or maybe the interference scenarios that may cause issues within an environment. I think that's our number one. Customers may have this is the number one issue that, or maybe troubleshooting issues that you as partners are dealing with your customers, devices or mobile tablets or PIM machines or scanners that can't connect well to the internet or connect to the Wi-Fi well, or you may have guest networks or guests who come to the office or to the business who can't get reliable internet connectivity. because of either interference or just the way that it's deployed. So wireless is usually the biggest piece that I think, again, people are utilizing since it's convenient. Everything pretty much has Wi-Fi built into it at some point, and making sure that all of that is not interfering with each other and causing, issues for your customers and for your maintenance, or helping to integrate those things into your applications there. So Wi-Fi 7, that driving force, and we can see kind of the iteration. This year is kind of the biggest push. We had already launched our Wi-Fi 7 access point at the end of last year in 2023, but we continue to expand on the portfolio. And a lot of it is, again, just dealing with either different ranges in cost, different types of antenna configurations to give you higher bandwidth, and then being able to facilitate ultimately any kind of MU-MIMO or multi-link operation functions in the future, as well as devices are getting more supported. And I think that really is that driving factor too, is that more and more devices will be supported when you start getting a lot more of your phones that end up supporting Wi-Fi 7. You already have an iteration of Wi-Fi 6E, which gives you that 6 gigahertz flavor already. So it opens up a bigger channel. Again, we've been operating in 2.4 and 5 gigahertz for a long, long time now with Wi-Fi 5 and Wi-Fi 6. And so Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7 opened up the 6 gigahertz range. And you can see from a channel utilization and a bandwidth utilization, you can go 160 megahertz band channels and have a lot more, non-overlapping channels compared to something like a 5 gigahertz, which might have two channels. And some of the channels, especially in 5 gigahertz, since it operates in that DFS channel range, some devices don't even use DFS channels. So you kind of get mitigated to maybe one or two channels in an 80 megahertz range. Whereas the 6 gigahertz is pretty much more channels than the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz combined. So you can see as more devices are moving to that 6 gigahertz, it opens up for your legacy devices on 2.4 to have a cleaner space, while all of your devices that can support 6 gigahertz can be pushed towards that to kind of free up that airspace. And airspace is, just like a traffic lane, pretty much. So there's a lot more lanes on that 6 gigahertz freeway that you can operate on and send traffic on, compared to 2.4 or 5 gigahertz at those. So you can see, again, that benefit is going to really push forward the need for these higher end Wi-Fi 7s. And there's always that balance. Right now, with Wi-Fi 7 is in that new phase, but eventually mass production and cost and really, I think chipset vendors will force everybody to that Wi-Fi 7 space anyways. So everybody will have to either go or be stuck at that using their legacy access points, et cetera. But in order to facilitate that, we're going to see a big upgrade cycle. We're already starting to see that. Our attach rate for Wi-Fi 7 is definitely been growing quite substantially compared to Wi-Fi 6 from a sales perspective. So it's definitely taken over that space. And so now we want to make sure that partners like yourself are educated in that you could still use certain access points, still utilizing gigabit kind of connectivity. But ultimately, you might have to think, or at least forward think or future plan on Wi-Fi 7, utilizing beyond 1 gig. And how do you get to that 1 gig is multi-gig or 10 gig. But multi-gig is the next kind of iteration step. But the other thing that the channel space utilization of Wi-Fi 7 is going to, again, really change the game on a lot of the unused space packets that are being sent, or unused channels that are there, that you can literally utilize a kind of a segment, almost like a packet inside that traffic, in order to utilize it better and to make it more efficient. So then you can use that bandwidth in there for more data purposes, rather than it getting kind of be lost in like a dead air, kind of airspace time there. So it really allows for you to do that. And again, as devices are evolving, you get more and more Wi-Fi 7 devices in your phones, your iPhones, et cetera. Those are going to then really drive customers on the business side, because even Wi-Fi 7 today is readily available in the consumer space. You can find 6 gigahertz range, but there's really the devices is going to be that driving factor. In most businesses, we always see this cycle where when they have Wi-Fi 7 at home, and devices that you're using at home our Wi-Fi 7, the natural kind of desire is to also be able to fully utilize that functionality in the businesses or when they go to certain places. But you as service providers and as partners and integrators, installing Wi-Fi 7 really will give you some of the kind of eliminate some of those headaches that are the challenges of Wi-Fi 6 today, because of again, you are only operating on the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. It's always too many devices, not enough access points, too much interference because there's so much noise that's happening in those spaces. So how do we deal with that? Is really that Wi-Fi 7 and this function. This is the function that I think everyone is kind of waiting for. It's called multi-link operation. In Wi-Fi 6 and below, it was always kind of a one-on-one single operation kind of communication. So you either talked on 2.4 or you communicated on 5 gigahertz. But with Wi-Fi 7, it's going to allow for these devices to talk to multiple channels at the same time, being able to see and pull in packets and information from any of those spaces at the same time. So not only are you now expanding the possibility of bandwidth, but then you're also avoiding interference as best as possible as well. And maybe that device has better 2.4 coverage at that time, but still can see 5 gigahertz. So then you can benefit still from drawing from both. Well, you still have stability, but you can kind of increase some of your bandwidth using the 5 gigahertz. So that's really the benefit. But right now, most devices don't have that multi-link operation yet, or it doesn't have it turned on yet. Even our devices today on the Wi-Fi 7, we have that coming in this year, I believe, in a future firmware upgrade. And so that's just a free upgrade that's going to happen to support that multi-link operation. So the chipset can support it. It's just a matter of integrating that as well. Is Milo, Valentine asked, is Milo only working on the same AP or also between different APs to the client? So it can also technically be from other APs as well. So it's almost like a peer-to-peer data transmission. I think it's up to 2 right now, but there's, it depends on how the implementation will be. And it's mostly kind of limited, I would say, to what the device themselves, like little client devices, can handle. Obviously, they're going to be put onto, their mobile devices, which they may end up limiting it to maybe a 2.4 and a 6 gigahertz. It just depends. Sometimes if they're trying to do some cost cutting there on the client device, or maybe power consumption control, they may not have all 3 bands, operational at the same time. So likely it's going to choose something like a 2.4 for, just again, a legacy operation to allow for it to connect to more things, or maybe a 5 gigahertz to connect to more legacy APs and networks and give it more compatibility. And then the 6 gigahertz to give it, kind of that extra boost, extra bandwidth, and avoiding those channels that might be bad. But either way, it's going to give you that better overall throughput, connectivity, reliability. Because right now, you can see there's like, well, I'm connected to an AP that's right here, or maybe I'm in a distance and I kind of see 2 different APs, and I would benefit if I can connect to both in a sense. So again, I think it depends on how many antennas and radios that are available for the client side devices to do that. And so our flagship Wi-Fi 7 model is actually the world's first Wi-Fi 7 access point with smart antenna technology. It's our WBE 660S. And again, this is our flagship model. It provides powerful, secure wireless in that Wi-Fi 7 space with a maximum throughput PHY in it, capable of 22 gigabits per second. Obviously, it's not going to get all the way up to that because there's overhead and such. So the real world, it's going to be over multi-gig. So, over 2.5 gigs of data that you're going to push through it on a kind of real world scenario. but it's very operational. It's Nebula Pro, meaning that it comes with 1 year of our Nebula Cloud platform. If you don't know our Nebula Cloud platform, we do have webinars specifically on that, but that is our cloud platform that manages not only access points, but switches and gateways as well under a single pane of glass. But it gives you this enterprise grade Wi-Fi 7 connectivity. So we're really competing, on that higher end with some of the enterprise competitors. We do have some value APs that we've released as well to kind of fit maybe the lower price points that you may need for your budgets of your customers, or maybe for smaller implementations. But for me, my recommendation is to use this smart antenna or any of our other smart antenna technology APs, because the performance, not only are you going to benefit from ultimately the multi-link operation, but imagine multi-link operation with smart antenna technologies. So that will allow for you to get better utilization, better interference mitigation with that smart antenna. And that's a patented technology that really allows for you to handle a lot of these noisy environments. Or let's say if you have more than 10 APs that are in a very small area, or you have a multi-tenant unit or apartment complexes that people are just lighting up for general use, those are kind of the optimal kind of technologies to use smart antenna. So please, I would say that it would save you the headache of having to deal with a lot of kind of the Wi-Fi issues that come up. Maybe not today, because you may have installed it when there's no tenants there, and eventually over time, every tenant has 4 or 5 devices themselves, and their house has smart devices. Next thing you know, just like in my house, all of a sudden, why are there 40 or 50 Wi-Fi devices that are connected into our access point network? So you'll see how it explodes pretty quickly there in those kinds of environments, to make sure, again, that smart antenna technology using Wi-Fi 7, being able to mitigate a lot of that interference. Joe asked, what's the retail price of the WBE 660 right now? And yes, it is shipping now. We have stock of it already. It was launched back in December. We got a big shipment coming in January. We sold all of that out. We have more product that's here as well. I think the current new price is super aggressive. So a flagship model with smart antenna, I think right now street price is $449.99, and we are also offering an NRE, not for resale, discount. NRA, sorry, not NRA, NRA discount that you can utilize, go through your distributor. I think it's like at a $300 street price or something like that, or $300 your cost. So going through our distribution, we can set up a special pricing adjustment there for that unit for you. So NFR, not for resale, sorry. So you can get your hands on it to even test it, to try it out, put it on Nebula, and see how it performs in those networks for you. But the big deal, why do we need to talk about multi-gig? Is that all of these antennas, it's a triple radio doing 2.4, 5 gigahertz, and 6 gigahertz all at the same time. Because of all that, there's a 10 gig uplink capable of 1 gig, 5 gig, 2.5 gig, and 10 gig on the Ethernet. There's a lot of components that are in here, so it does run a little hot. So because there is a lot of power going through it, so we have to shield it. We have to do cooling, different cooling spreaders and things like that to maintain the performance and of that device. And it has that smart antenna, so you can see the cooling on the back plane of the device has kind of a grill that allows to separate the heat there from the PCB there. It can be USB-C powered, or it's PoE++ powered through an injector or a multi-gig switch. And again, that's why it's important to think about that multi-gig switching there. To mount it onto a T-bar, we have some T-bar drop ceiling clips that can attach to the T-bar, and then this mounting, it's a metal mounting bracket that can then be attached to those clips. Or if you're just mounting it onto a wall or onto a ceiling, and you can use these mounting holes for that purpose as well. This can be used in high density locations, outdoor, or facing like in a school. It can be put in a separate type of enclosure if you're doing it more of an outdoor, if you're needing Wi-Fi 7 coverage out there. But primarily it's made for that high density, high concentration schools, hotels, conference centers, things like that, where you need that high density. You need to facilitate a lot of client devices, multiple networks for private and public use access there. Valentin asks, so what is the plan for the BLE support? Is it available in Nebula? I have to check with our Wi-Fi, our PM on that. I know it has the BLE support there as a kind of an upgrade, but I don't know if there are any specific applications on it yet that that have it or that utilize that completely yet. If you do have a any kind of application that you're thinking about needing that BLE support, definitely send me a message and I can check with you or at least pass it on as feedback on what we can utilize it for. Or maybe in a car manufacturing or a auto dealership that needs Wi-Fi coverage, both inside the building or maybe some retail stores that need Wi-Fi as well for their IoT devices, for their IP cameras. A lot of things are functioning off of the Wi-Fi network. So making sure that your Wi-Fi network is operational and that the infrastructure inside of it is operational to the max of its ability, then you can fully utilize and have better quality of service for your customers for those devices and applications. So a lot of the switches that you see here, like our XGS 1930s, those are 10 gig uplinks with gigabit port, or our XMG 1930 models that have our multi-gig 2.5 and 10 gig. And then you pair that with a security firewall like our USG Flex 700H to have that complete solution security, infrastructure, and wireless connectivity. Or if you're utilizing or maybe launching some high bandwidth applications for online gaming, broadcasting, AR or VR type applications, that can help to reduce Wi-Fi 7 will help reduce latency and enhance those user experiences there. So you can see some of those switches and the APs there. There is also there's an NWA 130BE model that's in, I believe, the $169 price point, street price. So that's kind of our entry level Wi-Fi 7 AP, but it doesn't have that smart antenna technology. So if that's great, perfect for if you just have a small office, there's no other APs kind of around it or no other buildings that are close, and you only need one or two access points for that small office, great, perfect. That kind of model is great for that. Now, of course, there's still a caveat. If you do have a small space, small office, but there's many divisions or many rooms that are there, you still have to follow kind of the rule of thumb for Wi-Fi is that we don't want devices or APs to have to traverse, actually more of the devices themselves, to have to traverse more than two walls. So if you put in an AP and you drew a line from that AP to any point in that building or in the room, if you're kind of crossing two walls, or even if you close the door, two walls is probably max I would recommend before you start kind of getting, kind of loss in signal. Not just loss in signal, not necessarily from our AP, because our AP is a high power device. It's usually the devices themselves. So the handheld devices, they're made for battery life optimization, and so they typically don't have a huge power output. So they may see the signal well from the device, but then trying to communicate back, it will get stopped by, if you have three walls or four walls for sure, you're going to have a terrible experience. Three walls, you may be able to get by if there is some overlapping signal. And then again, that's where ultimately multi-link operation will help too, because it will be able to see other APs around it to help utilize that bandwidth. So understanding PoE, this is some of the terminologies that you're already used to. So PoE Plus is our 30 watt standard. It has maximum to 25.5 watts to go to the device. Because of that, there's overhead or loss in power in the transmission. But then you have your Ultra PoE, which is our PoE++, which is 60 watt standard. also a 90-watt standard as well as included in that space. So that gives you up to 51 watts of power. Or if you're using the 90-watt, then it's, I think it's like 78 watts of power or something like that. But it allows for you then to send and power up more powerful devices on the opposite end. So you have to also be aware of the cat cable that you're running in order to make sure that you can fully utilize multi-gig. And in order to also to transmit power. So if you're wanting to go up to 10 gigs of throughput, you'll need Cat 6 or Cat 6A installed in order to go that full 300 meters. If you're doing 5 gigabits or less, then of course you can use Cat 5e still for that. The maximum distance for PoE is 100 meters. It goes the same distance as Ethernet, unless you're using some of our products that have some extended range, which can then push PoE power a little bit further, about 2.5 times further than your normal Cat signal or Cat limitations there. So multi-gig is the future for us. It's the future of infrastructure. Right now, people have been trying to jump to 10 gig, but I think that gap is a little too big for really the migration. 10 gig is very highly used in kind of the core networks of things in your data centers, or even higher than 10 gig connectivity in data centers, right? But for kind of the small office, I think the limitation or the limiting factor right now is your internet WAN speed. So most people can't even get up to 1 gig yet. But there are some places that are being offered multi-gig. So you can get 2.5 gig fiber or all the way up to 10 gig fiber to the office. In some cases, if it's fiber run, they might even offer it to the home. So we have some customers and service providers that have that offering to provide 2.5, 5, and 10 gig fiber connectivity to that prem. And in order then to maximize that, and then to maximize the Wi-Fi capabilities in higher than 1 gig and to fully utilize the higher speeds, you're going to need to have this infrastructure. So our XMG series is our multi-gig 10 gig switch, and our XS series are our 10 gig capable. Of course, it's multi-gig in there in between, but it's primarily a 10 gig capable switch. So we have multiple models there. Our XS 1930 is kind of a smaller port count. It goes up to like 8 ports or 12 ports, depending on which model. We have a PoE version, but each one of the ports, like on our XS 1930 12 HP, provides 60 watts of power on those ports, and it has a full budget of like 375 watts on 8 ports. So quite a bit of power there to pretty much provide 100% capacity of Wi-Fi 7 APs if that's what you're installing there. And it's manageable both in standalone and in cloud managed mode with our Nebula Cloud. So we have a couple of flavors there. We have a 12F if you're looking to run 10 gig SFP plus fiber to the prem or to maybe other devices within the building. And then this could be kind of your fiber core that uplinks those other APs that have 10, or those other switches that then provide PoE power to those access points. The XS 1930-12HP, it's our PoE version, also has 10 gig uplinks and 10 gig copper ports. Or if you're just looking for a non-PoE version, our XS 1930-10. So it's 8 RF RJ45 10 gig ports or multi-gig ports and 2 SFP plus ports there. And you're able to visualize the different speeds within our XS switches. Then it has multiple coloring as well. So you can see the different speeds and also the PoE mode, how much power consumption can also be visualized on the device itself. So you don't necessarily have to go into the interface to see if you're utilizing your power consumption, up to 80% or greater than 80%. Gives you that information off the bat. And it gives you the LED if you're connected via cloud, et cetera, as well, just from a visual management standpoint. So getting that 10 gig uplink as your core, you have multi-gig, then it goes to your access points or even to just gigabit to the access points as well. You can aggregate that into a core. Some of the latest devices that you will see, information kiosks that are needing more than 60 watts, or sorry, up to 60 watts, maybe some access controls, even some computers that are just like terminal machines that are being powered. You might have pan tilt zoom cameras with like heating systems or infrared that need higher power than the 30-watt PoE. So a lot of different applications that are, being used for with, maybe not necessarily multi-gig, but then also that higher PoE standard that typically comes with these multi-gig ports. Um, and yeah, of course, our primary driving force for us at Zyxel is Wi-Fi 7 in itself, because the Wi-Fi 7, the one that you saw earlier, the 660S there, that has a um, kind of a power requirement of, I think it's like 28 watts or something like that. So it's greater than the 30-watt standard can push to it. It can still operate. So this is the other, maybe a, a tip to tell you as well, or things to watch out for, is a lot of these devices, especially our devices, we allow for you to underpower the device. So you need to be aware there will be warnings on the interface that it doesn't have enough power. So it will have one of the radios or a radio turned off. So it doesn't power up that radio. It allows for you to still have connectivity, still use the device, but you want to be able to give it that full power so that it can turn on all of its radios to fully maximize its performance. So keep that in mind, because you may, plug it in to an old infrastructure and not realize that you're actually underpowering the device. And then some customers will be like, well, I don't see the 6 gigahertz range, or I'm not getting the throughput that I'm expecting. So again, keep that in mind when you are kind of doing your survey on that customer, whether or not you can use their existing infrastructure or have to go through the process of putting in multi-gig and then even changing cabling if necessary. But that is the driving force, that this can be the backbone of the future, because it does support multi-gig. Most of the switches will be, this specific one goes all the way up to 10 gig. It also supports Nebula Cloud as well. So being able to switch from standalone or using it in the cloud gives you flexibility depending on which application type you're doing. We also stand by our products and our hardware because of our hardware design. We have thermal designs there that can support large temperature ranges. We also put smart fans in there to lower the noise and operating noise there. We use noise filters on the power to enhance stability of the product. And also the biggest thing is our solid state capacitor utilization. So that gives you a longer mean time between failure. If you look at some of our data sheets there, we have that MTBF information. And typically it's in the multiple hundreds of thousands or even up to 1 million hours of uptime, or perceived uptime based on the components that being used. The higher the uptime, basically the longer time in between failures that the device on average would exhibit. So that a lot of it's in that 30 years to 75 years, of timing for our products, and that's why we can offer you a limited lifetime warranty on our products for the life of the product. So some additional multi-gig devices or switches that we've launched recently that you may see or will start seeing in the channel. The first one is our XMG 1915 series. It's been out for a little while. We were out of stock of the 10 EPs and the 18 EPs for a little bit, but we have stock of them now. So these are our multi-gig, kind of an entry-level multi-gig that is manageable by Nebula. So it's the lowest end model that you can get that has Nebula, gives you multi-gig, gives you PoE power. And you can see the power budgets on these entry levels. It's a little bit smaller. It's like here you can see on the 10 EP is 130 watts, or on the 18 EP is 180 watts of power. And there's certain, so it has like 1 gig and 2.5 gig ports on it with 10 gig SFP uplinks. So it still gives you a great option, if you're doing, I would say 6 to 8 APs, it probably would still work depending on the models that you choose, but then give you the multi-gig uplink capabilities. I didn't mention it in here, but we also have some multi-gig capable PoE injectors. So if you're not looking to get something that's manageable, you just need some higher bandwidth with high power. We do have our PoE 12, both in 30 watt, 60 watt, and then coming, it's on its way, um, is a 90 watt version that has a 10 gig kind of 10 gig capability with 90 watts of PoE power injection. So we have those single injectors that are available today as well. The XMG 1930 series is our kind of our midline flex model. It gives you the, again, a capability to go into the Nebula cloud, but it gives you kind of a flexibility port options here with 24 port that are a gig, 2.5 gig. There'll be 4 ports that are all the way up to 10 gig. So it's 2.5, 5, and 10 gig. And then you have an additional 2 SFP plus 10 gig uplinks. And these models in a kind of a 24 port configuration gives you up to 700 watts of PoE power. So a lot more power than you typically would see in our gigabit space, because 8 of those PoE ports can then do the 60 watt standard, while the other 20 can do the 30 watt standard. So it's a little bit of a mix and match. So be aware of that as well as you're pricing out. You may have a network that is, you only need per, let's say per floor, 8 APs. So you have the 8 APs that are using the smart antenna or the highest end one that requires the 60 watt. And then the other PoE could be for, door access or panels or screens or voice over IP phones or whatever it may be, set-top boxes that are PoE powered, or even just smaller in-room APs. So maybe the higher density APs are kind of serving the larger areas, the main areas, whereas then you have your smaller APs that don't have that full power go to the rooms. So individual room APs. So we have a whole range of products that will do that as well. So you can mix and match as you need and be able to manage it all still within the Nebula cloud. So definitely keep that in the back of your mind that these are the XMG series is kind of a hybrid, giving you both 2.5 gig, 10 gig options, and then different power options. So 30 watts and 60 watt options there you can see here. And I think most of it too is for a lot of it is for kind of a cost scenarios. We could make a product that was just full powered, full everything, but current applications and such, there's not that yet a requirement to you know to spend that kind of money just to have a lot of extra power for no reason. So this will better utilize that. If you do need to have kind of maybe a full package, um, with 10 gig and full power, then I would suggest using our XS1930 series so that you have all 10 gig ports and it has a 375 watt power budget on those 8 ports. And then you can just stack those instead to give you kind of that full max power utilization application there. But that last switch that you saw, the XMG 1930, it gives you that hybrid option for multiple types of devices that are in that network, giving you that flexibility. So our XS3800 series model, there's no PoE, but it is basically 10 gig ports with SFP plus and copper options that you can mix and match to get what you need. This can be utilized as a top of the rack type product, or can be used to be your kind of your central core where you have all other 10 gig switches already getting uplinked to this device, or at least within the ring topology that gets you to that multi-gig firewall out to the internet. So we have products even on the firewall side as well that help facilitate that multi-gig. I didn't show it here, but you did see it in one of the slides that USG Flex 700H does have 10 gig uplink port capability and multi-gig LAN ports as well. So you can then, again, fully build out a multi-gig infrastructure all the way out to the internet connection. So connecting offices and doing, again, different types of applications. You might have some multi-gig and 10 gig servers, backup devices. You have now capability to put your access points on this multi-gig. being able to fully utilize that bandwidth and connectivity. And some people say, well, my internet connection is not fast enough anyways, but there are other applications and benefits in the communication, file sharing that can best utilize. Most people have laptops that use Wi-Fi. And so they're kind of at the subject and stuck to that Wi-Fi for connectivity, and don't have even an Ethernet port in many devices to even plug into a 10 gig network to fully get benefit of that 10 gig bandwidth utilization. So imagine copying a file or even doing a backup of your device um, through Wi-Fi that then is stuck on a 1 gig uplink, and then multiply that by 10, 20 clients all doing the same thing at the same time. Then that's going to really bog down and really slow down. So getting that multi-gig or even up to 10 gig capability, high speed throughput, it's going to free that up and it's going to make things a lot quicker. But you have to have that infrastructure to support it. So again, multi-gig is, I think, to me, very important to get that first step. If you can't go to 10 gig, obviously, if you can go to 10 gig, um, then go to 10 gig because that's where it's going to end up being. But a lot of our customers, a lot of your customers and partners are like, well, I don't really need it yet. I don't have to pay that much for it. So what's my next kind of best option? And so multi-gig gives you that stepping stone to 10 gig, I believe, ultimately at the end of the day. But right now, the technologies, Wi-Fi 7 is pushing that envelope. And so you're going to want to get to that 5 gig mark, at least very soon in order to maximize kind of the device that you're installing there. So we're already seeing requests, especially now with schools and budgets kind of being looked at for kind of the coming year. And some of these schools and places are on Wi-Fi 5 in many cases that we've seen. And so they want to, leapfrog Wi-Fi 6 and get to Wi-Fi 7. So I think this is definitely a good time for some of those opportunities that are there. So we're seeing a lot more activity in those kinds of projects, and hopefully you will as well. And to know that Zyxel has solutions that can help with those kinds of deployments. Whether you're building the infrastructure, you're building 10 gig infrastructure, this can get you that stepping stone to fully maximizing those applications. So we work through the channel. If you're not signed up as a partner already, please feel free to join. It's free to join, and you start out at the silver phase when you join. And in order to kind of qualify or maintain that standing for silver, it's 6K in 6 months. So that's just doing 1K of business with Zyxel products per month. Or if you are wanting to get to our gold, which many of our partners are, we set the bar, fairly low, so to help you achieve that, it's equivalent to 2K a month. So you would think maybe if you did one application, like multiple APs, let's say 2 or 3 APs, a multi-gig switch, and a multi-gig capable firewall, you're probably already looking at you getting close to 2K already. And so that you just need to do one of those per month to maintain gold. And so many of you already are doing that. You're doing well beyond that. And thank you for that. But our goal is to just to have you engaged. We want to give you the margin as long as you engage with us, and just to if you prioritize or use Zyxel or suggest Zyxel, right? We want to reward you for that. So we work through DNH, Ingram, Synix, Wave, Target Distribution, and we've launched Blue Star in Canada. So any of those you can load. We can load your pricing there. If for some reason, please be aware if you look at your pricing at any of these distributors and you're like, hey, why is my price like Amazon pricing or the street price? That means your discount is not loaded or it has fallen off, or maybe you haven't purchased from that distributor in a long time or something like that, and it's been removed or they drop you off automatically or something like that. So we have to re-enter you back into that discount code. So let your sales account manager know that so that we can get it done. Don't just say, oh, well, I can't make any money off this, so forget it, right? We want to make sure you have the right pricing there because that's where we support you through this channel so that you can still sell at that discounted price, at the street price that you see, the visible street price, and make your associated margins there based on your bronze, silver, or gold pricing tier. And then, of course, if you do have some deal registrations as well, or projects that you're working on, contact our sales managers there. They will bring in our systems engineer if necessary. We want to be able to help scope out the project for you, with you, have that discussion on why we suggest smart antenna or why we suggest this particular switch for those applications. We want you to not just go with like some value product that, it's just because it's like the lowest price you can get, because there are certain scenarios where that is going to cause you more headache than you anticipate, because you're underpowering it, or in that kind of environment, it's not going to facilitate the application well. So let us help you, and we'd be glad to show you why, or to help you decide and help convince your customer why this is the best option for you. So if you'd like to connect with us at Zyxel, please subscribe or join or follow us at Zyxel-US channel on LinkedIn, or on YouTube at Zyxel America channel. That's where these kind of videos would get posted or linked to as well, as are on our website. You can also look for me on LinkedIn. Just search for Zyxel Tri, so TRI, and you should be able to find the picture of me. And thank you, Valentine, for joining as well. Thank you. I appreciate the comments there and your questions. So if there is some time left, if you do have some questions, please feel free, whether it be on the webinar or if you have just questions about anything else about our products, our solutions, things you're working on. We are also always looking for case studies. If you want to join our kind of a case study group, or offer a case study, white paper type, maybe you have a very unique application you've used our products on, or maybe you've installed Wi-Fi 7 recently and how it solved your problems. Please reach out to me, and we'd love to get you on with that case study, or even as a testimonial. Word of mouth. We don't spend a lot of money on marketing side of things. And so we really depend on partners like yourself sharing with other partners about your successes and how it's benefited you. Sergi has asked, Sergi, what settings in Nebula Cloud will affect the Wi-Fi 7 signal strength? I mean, how do you get the maximum signal strength in open spaces like hallways or parkades? So there's always a balance. We can always turn up. You'll see within the Wi-Fi settings within Nebula, there's a section that's called like signal strength, or not signal strength, like output power. And it's usually set at the max that's allowed for that device. In most of these cases, it's like 30 dBm. It might be 27 dBm, but a lot of them it pushes it to like 30 dBm, which is kind of the FCC like max regulated. Some competitors actually push beyond that. They say they do that, but when you actually measure it, it actually goes beyond it. So it's not necessarily the right thing to do per se. Ours, obviously, we put it at 30 dBm. The issue is not necessarily the output of the AP, but it's more so what is the signal strength capability or the transmit of the devices that you're gonna be using the Wi-Fi for. If you're using a laptop, if let's say you're building out the network primarily for a laptop scenario, then the laptop is going to have a lot more power than your mobile device. So what we usually tell customers and partners is that when you build out a Wi-Fi network, you kind of have to go to the lowest power denomination, I guess you can say, meaning that you have to use kind of the lowest power device there to give you the communication, or to do the test communication. So that site survey, well, until you kind of have that experience of gauging the walls that are there, materials that might be there. Is it a wall of mirrors? Is it a rack of metal devices? Things like that you kind of already can mentally picture what's going to happen to that Wi-Fi signal. So if you have your device, not only do you want to make sure that you can see the signal, but you also want to do like a speed test to then test the kind of the latency of the device trying to send packets back to the Wi-Fi. Because you could sit with an AP that is super high powered, meaning that it's transmitting at a, or it's sending out its signal at a very high um, um, high signal strength, and your device will see it. Wow, I could see four bars or 5 bars. It's so powerful. But then when it tries to communicate back, it doesn't have that same power. So the AP is gonna have a hard time hearing from that device. So you still have to kind of go back to kind of the fundamentals of Wi-Fi. Don't go past more than 2 walls if you can. If you have to get to a third wall, fine, as long as it's maybe like a door. But if it's like, oh, I got to go through concrete, then you're going to go like concrete's like 1 wall. Again, because not because of the AP, but because of the device. So smart antenna can help because smart antenna will not only speak in the direction of the device, but then also turn its ears basically and receive in that direction as well better. So it helps to kind of, helps you through. But even with me, if I had a megaphone and I'm, talking to you and you're on the other side of the field, you could hear me perfectly fine. But then if you try to just talk back without a megaphone, I won't be able to hear you. So that's that Wi-Fi kind of analogy. And then if you imagine now, not just that, but imagine you're in a room where, and we've all been this kind of room where there's, let's say it's a meeting or you have a bunch of family members or you're at a camp or something like that. You have one person with a megaphone and they could talk and everyone in that group can hear. But the moment any one of them tries to talk and they're all talking, no one can hear anything, and including the megaphone. So that's part of the Wi-Fi. The more devices that you start having in a coverage area space, the AP is trying to listen to, let's say, 100 different devices all at the same time. That adds to that noise, adds to that interference, just like when you're having a conversation in that kind of, scenario. I mean, it's like a conference center, right? Somebody with a megaphone in a trade show, you could hear that person, but all the extra noise, people are having chatter with each other. It's harder to hear them. And of course, they won't be able to hear you at all without a megaphone. So you can change the quantity. What we want you to do a lot of times is in order to mitigate the noise, if you have more than a few APs, you don't want to also add to the noise. Imagine if you had, going back to the megaphone analogy, imagine if you had 10 people all with megaphones and they were all talking at the same time, right? And the person in the middle is trying to hear what any one of those 10 people are talking or saying. That's going to add to that kind of the overall noise. So a lot of times the thought is to not just put it at full power, but control it so that you have maybe a little bit less power. So then the noise, everyone can talk in a lower tone of voice and be able to hear each other because now you have to be kind of closer to the AP in order to get, that conversation going. And then you don't hear as much of the bleed over of the other devices or the other people that are in that room. Right? Does that make sense? So that's really like my mentality on how I build out Wi-Fi, keeping those things in mind. Of course, if you're doing a hotel, you're trying to get best coverage, so you still want to have some overlap, but you have to manage that overlap. You have to say, well, I'm stacking APs on top of each other. That means the extra noise that's coming from every AP on every floor is going to hit everything. So that's where usual designs of Wi-Fi networks, you don't necessarily put them just on top of each other. You kind of offset them. So you offset the channels, you offset the signals so they kind of get bleed over, within the floors, between the floors and within the floors, right? So you have to look at it in that whole three-dimensional space there. Sergey also asked, is it possible to adjust the signal per device within the same SSID? Let's say 10 APs installed on different floors, so they just need the same SSID, might have different signal strength or frequency requirements. So it doesn't necessarily, like, you don't adjust the signal per device within the same SSID. What we do use is when you do use our Nebula Pro, we call it Wi-Fi health capabilities and also band steering. So what we do is also using AI, using some settings that allows for devices that are, let's say, seeing multiple APs as they're roaming. It will, when it hits certain thresholds. So let's say I'm connected to this AP on the floor. I'm still connected. I still see it. My device hangs on to it. I go to the other side where there's also another AP, but because I still see the other AP within the tolerance of the client, it stays connected. And so a lot of iPhones are notorious for this. And so what we do within our APs and within the Nebula setting within the Pro is that you can set these thresholds. So let's say if it goes to a quality of service -75 or -80, once it starts approaching that, we can actually tell the device, tell the AP to kick the device, so disassociate it, so that knowing that it's underneath another AP with better signal, so then it can reconnect, within like a packet to get to that. So it can do it very quickly and very easily, very seamlessly to the user, and be able to then provide better quality of service. So even if they were doing a stream, they were streaming a video and it was there wouldn't be any, there would already be a buffering to that. So even as they disconnect and reconnect, it would uh, it would catch up. You never actually see a buffering window because it would happen too quickly. So it would be associated to the AP right underneath it. So those are some of the things that help with that. Um, you can control the signal strength by APs, but not by a single device. But that's how we can control based on the signal strength, to tell it what AP, or also tell it if your device is capable of 5 GHz, it will try to prefer you to the 5 GHz versus putting you on 2.4. Now, some people have asked before, like, what if the device is kind of on the fringe? There's no other APs beyond it. Well, within that threshold, you can also set like, well, how many times you want them to, to try to kick them off your network to give them better quality of service. And you can set it, I think it's like 3 or 5 or whatever it is. You can set that. There's a default number. But then it'll kick them the 3 times. And if you still came back because you didn't have another AP, it will let you on at that, degraded level until obviously you would roam back into it, but at least you can see that information. And with Nebula, if you haven't used Nebula yet with Wi-Fi, I definitely recommend that. So you can see kind of the power of the Nebula platform. You can literally see, oh, so and so's phone is connected to this AP and the signal strength is at -75 dB. So that can be an instant troubleshooting scenario. If they had called in to say, hey, my phone is having poor signal, you can literally go and see, okay, where are you standing? Oh, you're on the first floor. I wonder why you're connected to the third floor AP, right? Because maybe, again, that's the roaming issue there. It's not kicking them to a nearby AP. That's where you then may have to consider using that Wi-Fi health and using the kind of the pro feature functions to help push people to the appropriate APs better. And again, that's more of that when you have that complex environment, a lot of APs, a lot of devices in there. That's when these things become very important to building into your network. If you only have 1 or 2 APs, no big deal. Like that's all you have to worry about. It's a small office. You're not dealing with hundreds or thousands of client devices potentially, or roaming devices, things like that. There's a lot of things to keep in mind depending on the application. It's not easy to just say, well, I'm just going to set it and just leave it and not do any kind of pre-thought into that kind of network to fully utilize it. Good question. Thank you. All right. I think we have just like maybe a minute left. So I'll just close it down here. If there are no other questions, if you do have questions, you think about it later on, you can always email me. It's tri@zyxel.com. Again, if you want to join me on LinkedIn as well, you can always subscribe to that and follow me there for content. And if you have any questions as well, or you can reach out to your sales managers. We're here to serve you. We're here to partner with you, and look forward to talking to you again soon. So thank you again for spending this morning and now afternoon with me, and look forward to hearing you again soon on another Tech Talk. Thank you. See you again.